Well, I can't tell if it's working or not, but the intro is playing. Oh, in the background. I hit the wrong button. Sorry, I'm a professional.
Good minds discover events. Great minds discuss ideas.
And I'm here with Mike Eliasson. Elias. Why do I keep getting that wrong?
Elias. It's all right. Don't worry about
Elias. Dang it.
Jewish, not Mexican.
Huh? Yeah, that's right. And I just wanted to get into what you thought of. So I was thinking about this in terms of your love as an is it love as an epistemology or what?
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about.
We've been talking about that. And one thing I've been thinking about is as I've been thinking about sin and what is sin, I put a little bit of this in the it came up because of a discussion in the Wagon Dow, and the idea for me that has been the thought I can't escape, or that I've been working on, is the idea that God created a sort of the image of God in us, is the power as humans, is the ability to take in data in extraordinary ways quickly and to organize it in terms of what is good for us and what isn't good for us, and sort of preternatural instincts of sorts that God has put in us, and that the Holy Spirit enhances, but that we have in us from birth, that helps us distinguish, through the power. I think through love is a more powerful force than maybe the everyday forces of interest. When there's just an incredible amount, innumerable amount of things out there that we could put our attention to, but it's only certain things that we pay attention to, right? There's only certain things we focus on, and I think love plays into that, and I want to get your take on that. First of all, does that kind of track with you, or does that sound weird, that the idea of sort of a structural functionalism as humans, that is part of the image of God?
Yeah, it makes me think of a few different things. Like, I've heard this idea that attention is an organizing force. Like when we look at something, it kind of arranges itself into something that makes sense in a certain way. It might materially be a bunch of atoms and chaos, but when we perceive something, we put attention on it, it kind of puts a frame around it. And that frame is us, it's ours. And when we love something, it's a certain quality of attention that organizes it better, or more, with more fidelity, more truthfully. It kind of melts. It seems to melt the impositions that our frame puts on it. So it makes it more objective. It makes it less about who I am and what I'm projecting onto the thing I'm seeing, and more about appreciating what that thing actually is. And that appreciation like draws it out. Like if I love someone, I've been trying to think about, like, because we were talking about willing ourselves to love, or love someone, and I've been trying to think of how to like describe that, or give more specific, like, approximate steps to take to try that, without being kind of like a meditative weirdo. And so what I've come up with so far is like this intense appreciation. Like, you will yourself to say, thank God you are exactly what you are. I am so glad that you are exactly how you are. And when we're willing ourselves to love somebody, when I'm willing myself to love somebody, I'm kind of thinking that like a little dishonestly, like I don't totally mean it. So the willful effort comes into meaning it. It's like if I only mean it 60 or 2%, the effort is bumping that 2 up to 5 or that 60 up to 70 or up to 100, like whatever you can do. But that's like the effort part is, you know, I appreciate this to an extent. I want to appreciate it totally. And there's like, there's kind of like a willing oneself to not try to impose a preference onto a thing, willing oneself to be preferenceless with regard to it.
And I think that coincides exactly. That's where my mind went, sort of like, as because I was thinking of. I mean, that does get into interest in the incredible ability, beautiful ability for humans to transcend immediate needs or immediate feelings and say and learn, right? Like without what you're talking about, right? It maybe in a less relational way. We have a relationship with information all the time when we learn, right? Like when nobody would be able to learn anything because it would all seem from a book or from it seems boring to some extent, much of it, but we force ourselves to pay attention and love it in order for us to better ourselves and transcend our feelings of I need to eat, I need to have fun, these sort of things, right?
Yeah, totally.
But it's like taking that thing that we have in order to learn new things and work, really. I mean, that's what work is, right? Like we are making ourselves do something that's painful in order to get something else. But this is I like what you're talking about in terms of it being a purely relational thing. We're doing this in a way that we put a person, their personality in focus and say they are exactly the way they should be. I like that.
I'm glad. Yeah. I guess I would characterize it as perceptual, at least as much as relational, because we tend to think of love as this, as like a feeling, and it can be, but I'm interested in framing it in a more active way, and I don't merely mean active as in being Mother Teresa and literally feeding and serving people, which fantastic, of course, paragon of love. But I think there's also more subtle things that we can do that are active, that are loving, and there might just be that sort of willful appreciation in our own hearts, as an example. And the reason
I like that phrase, willful appreciation. I really want to emphasize that.
All right, thank you.
Appreciation.
I've just made that up, so I'll take note. Thank you for catching it.
That's good. I like that. I want to write that down. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
No, it's fine. I'm gonna get super nerdy here, which is something that I've been trying to stop doing. But just for a second,
I won't tell anybody.
People are gonna know. Yeah, because I'm about to use a lot of syllables probably. So like philosophy, when we do philosophy and when we do intellectual work in general, we're trying to understand something. We're trying to like build a model of it and analyze it and like build a system mentally, build a blueprint or a map so we can kind of navigate a thing out here. The problem with that is, the limitation with that is, it takes time to read a map and go, all right, so even if I have a perfect map, if I look at something out here, it appears a certain way, and then I have to go back to my map, find this thing, and learn about it. Is it surrounded by mountains? Is it surrounded by nihilism, like that's kind of how philosophy works. And what love does, and what I think is better, is it affects the perception itself. So it's not only that you can model a thing, it's that it appears immediately more accurate to how it is in real life, in objective reality. It doesn't take any reflection. It doesn't take any looking on a map. It's the way it actually appears to you is more accurate. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to model it. You don't have to analyze it. I think that's kind of the holy grail of philosophy, is actually improving our perception to be more faithful to reality, not just our models. And that's what love.
I think that's great. I love that. What it makes me wonder about, and I want to get your take on this, is what is the relationship with that particular perception and faith? So love and faith, because the other day I found myself, I was often talking to my dad on Ramble Source and stuff and Daddy-O-Cast, and I found myself siding with the idea that faith is a more useful and accurate tool than epistemology or truth. That faith is a different and more valuable thing than truth. And that, that sort of, there's a part of me that's thinking like, yeah, I don't want to say that, right? Because how do I know that with truth? But there's something where we don't rely on facts or truth or
Yes.
Propositional truth, I'll say, because faith is truth, is reality. But propositional truth, I think, needs to take a back seat to love and faith. And are love and faith the same thing? Or how do they differ? Where's the Venn diagram in this?
Yeah. I hear love and truth kind of get mentioned in the same breath more often than love and faith, though there is like faith, hope, and charity. So there are like different ways that these things group together, and that's its own thing that I have no expertise in, really. But what appears to me here, and what I'm really excited to talk about, is kind of two things. One is that willful appreciation, the willing oneself to love, seems to be an act of faith. It's saying, even though I don't immediately love you, I know I'm supposed to. And if it's God's will, it's going to work out. So I'm going to take this leap and dare to love you despite myself, because I know that God's will is underneath that, and it's going to be better than mine. And it's going to pay off.
Well, that's what I'm hearing you say, is that love is the action. It's that willful, what was it? The willful appreciation is love. But so that's sort of the action, but faith is the conduit or motivation, or it is the medium in which we can do it. Without it, we are just robots. And why would we? Faith gives the impetus.
Exactly. Because we have to do that we do that before we have a reason. You appreciate something. You don't wait for it to make you appreciate it. You appreciate it first. You go, this is going to be worth it. That's the act of faith. You go, this is lovable. Even this person is lovable, even if I can't see that yet. This situation is God's will, even if I can't see that yet. And that's what I'm excited about. That, like, God, nothing happens outside of God's will. The evil he permits, the good he creates, or however that distinction, ends up breaking down. But nothing happens outside of God's will. So if it happens, if it's happening, if it's here, then it's God's will. And if that's frustrating or not beautiful, if we can will ourselves to love that circumstance, what we're doing is having faith that God's will is in there and willing ourselves to see it and make peace with it, because It's there, and we're not faking that. We're digging for a reality that's actually there, and it's going to be easier. It's going to get easier because you're becoming more in alignment with reality. You're not, resisting so much.
Yes.
So that
The way
the connection.
I like that. The way I've been able to visualize it, when you say we're not faking it, we're well, for me, we're stepping onto a path. Well, I had a friend, just a brilliant guy, say that he was a counselor, and he often gave me good counseling. He said, sometimes we have to get, in our journey, we have to get on a path that's been there. It's an eternal path that many have taken before us, but it is a certain path. And we just get on that path, and we're not faking it. We're just getting on that path with the others that have before us in faith, knowing that it heads towards health and goodness and God.
Yeah. There's like an active trust. Like you go on, the cliche is companies will go on retreats and like do trust falls into each other's arms. Like, that's an act of trust. And, in one circumstance, something might feel like fake it till you make it, but this is an act of trust. You're putting your heart out there to be disappointed. You're putting your effort out there to be wasted. It's an act of trust. And what makes it faith as opposed to fake it till you make it is that it brings you more into alignment with reality. It's more real. It's not fake. It's more real.
I like that. I like that a lot. That is excellent. Well, I think the thing that makes this important to me, as in my journey, is I'm trying to decide like how we distinguish good from wrong, and how we get on these paths, and how we jump into this faith.
Yeah.
And there is so let me tell you a story. There was a pastor. I was part of this group, and there was a pastor that said, we were talking about what was it, sexuality, homosexuality. We're also talking about women in ministry and stuff like that. And so it came down, we had this discussion, this community discussion to talk about it, and came down to the idea that everything was a social construct. And at first that seemed, of course I was defensive against that a little bit, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought that's not a solution, in the sense of that that's a boring concept, because yes, everything is a social construct, but when everything is something, then nothing is, right? It's not whether or not it's a social construct that helps me give it value or not. It's something else. And that's when that sort of started me on the path to start thinking, well, how do we, it really, I was on this path of epistemology of love without knowing it in some sense, because I started thinking like, why I think everything is a social construct for me, not for God, not, for us, as we try to ascertain truth. We have to build it through socially constructed memes and definitions and stuff like that. However, cancer is a socially constructed idea, and so is a cold. But if somebody says I have cancer, I act much differently than if somebody says I have a cold, right? Like, there is a different response. There's a different value system. There's a different energy there that and how we react. Anyways, so I brought that up to say, I'm trying to remember here, but it has to do with how I sort of got on this idea, and it wasn't until I talked to you that I sort of get this, that I brought in, that I have started to think more about love I was thinking more in terms of society and relationships, but love, I really appreciate you bringing that to the foray. And what do you think about social constructs?
First, I want to say thank you. Like I wouldn't be talking about this stuff if you hadn't invited me to. So I really appreciate it. And I'm glad it's landing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Social constructs. So my first thought is, I don't think about this very often. My first thought is we're social creatures, and that's the medium through which we communicate. Like, I like your reaction to it. If everything is a thing, then nothing is that thing. It's kind of like pointing at our buildings and going, these are just material constructs. I could have built it out of something else. Yeah, you could have, but that's not what's important. Like,
Right.
the fact that we have a medium and the medium could function different ways does not make the things to which the mediums refer illusions or dispensable.
Right. Right.
Or insignificant or unimportant or of relative non-serious value. So like we could use any variety of words to describe the same things, but in the end there is that thing.
Yes.
So I think
like how you put that. Yeah.
Usually around the term, that the fact that we could use different we could relate to a thing in different ways and construct different social things around it. The fact that we can do that in different ways and throw them out and replace them, I think gets twisted and misinterpreted to mean therefore the things themselves can be switched out and thrown out and manipulated however we want. I don't think that's true.
I completely agree. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. They asked me, well, I wrestled with my faith at one point, and I came to the thought that my faith was based on the social construct, and it was socially motivated. It came from my parents, that sort of thing. It came from my social network, and so therefore, and then I started to come to the conclusion, well, therefore it was invalid, right? And I guess the fallacy in that is exactly what you're talking about. Just because it's made out of something different, these social forces are so important, and I think that I don't think people, especially in the woke crowd, take them seriously enough. Like, there's real danger, there's real pain in ignoring the importance of these socially constructed supports and these constructs. This building, like you're thinking of it as a building. Actually, I just thought of the dozers. Do you remember the dozers from Fraggle Rock and how they would make?
I don't think so. I think I kind of missed
Miss Fraggle Rock. Well, there was these dozers that all their whole existence was around sort of making these putting these straws together into buildings, and I think of society like that. It's all these important little straws that hold it together and that God put in place. And
yes,
I feel it.
That God put in place. That's the thing. Just because it's made of humans does not mean it's made by humans. God has made plenty of social constructs. God told Moses, here are the 10 commandments. That all the morality that we inherit in the West, I'm sorry, you just can't escape it, comes from that. And he said, you Levites will be the priests, and you will settle disputes like this, and you will have these rules. Just because humans execute it does not mean that humans invented it, and does not mean that it comes from human imagination and self-will and ingenuity. If it was given, if it's divine revelation, then even if it lives in a social construct, it's not a man-made disposable artificial thing like man makes. It's
right,
exactly. Different character.
I think is the key right there, is that what you're saying. I hadn't even thought of it that way, is that, well, I heard somebody say the other day, we were watching some video with a youth group and we were talking about the Bible, and some atheist said, well, that's pretty scary that people would listen to some guy in the sky, for truth or something like that. And I thought, no, I think it's way more scary if you believe in social constructs, that there is no one telling us what is important. There is no one giving us any kind of idea of what is real. Man, that would freak me out if I didn't believe in God, right? Like, and that's really what I came to, the why I came back to the existence of God and Christ, the Trinity's power in my life, is because you get away from, I get away from that and I go into crazy land.
Been there.
It's like these straws hold. You've been there too.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
Yeah, just I think that's the thing, that even God used and created social constructs as distinct from those that we create. So to call something a social construct, yeah, okay, it is, but it doesn't change the nature of it. If God made it, God made it. That, it's a social construct. There's kind of an Aikido move here. You kind of take the punch of, but it's just a social construct. But like, yeah, and even God uses those. God made those. God was not above. God did not disdain social constructs. God did not think social constructs were something to be dismissed and ignored and written off. He used them.
Right.
He made them.
He created them. Yeah. And I feel like there's even something here where it's like, it's not even God uses them. And that's the way God made it, like that
right.
is
beyond that. Sure.
That is language. That is how we, I think of the Tower of Babel and God just saying, well, they're going to have different languages. And that social construct of language, just fell apart as far as their relationships and their being able to work together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I may have taken us into a different.
No, I think this is interesting.
Trail.
I think this is interesting because, like, when people talk about social constructs, they usually use it as a reason to denigrate an institution, or the reasons to denigrate some tradition or something, some idea. And just the fact that God was not above honoring social constructs and using them shows that the fact of being a social construct does not make something worthy of dismissal. It's not even the insult that they think it is to call something a social construct. I guess that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what the pastor, this is the Reverend David Fitch. And I think that's what he was there to some extent was saying, is that's why we need Jesus. That's why we need God.
Yeah.
He is the author of all this. And without him, these straws fall apart, or like you said, are just pointless. Can just be dismissed without God. Yeah, you can interchange your sexuality. Yeah, you can interchange everything. And that is crazy. That's chaos.
Yeah. And the fact that we have equal power to do all kinds of things does not mean that doing all kinds of things is of equal value, of equal use.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you, Michael. This has been another very encouraging discussion.
I'm really glad. I'm really happy that it feels that way. I'm just kind of getting to share a little bit, and it feels nice. I'm glad it's working.
Well, and to me, that is the whole point of Ramble Sources, is for a platform for me and friends of mine to discuss. I used to do it so much more in college, but I realized that it's a medium made. It's a incubator for that sort of thing. And it's so hard. The older I get, the harder it is to find these incubators or these places that foster discussion. That's what the Wagon DAO is, one of those places that's good for that. And all your projects are sort of geared towards that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Idea market is like the perfect word for it. Maybe I'm talking a little bit more about it, not a market or a idea incubator. I don't know. I have to work on that. What am I talking
I love that metaphor goes deep. Like, obviously I didn't come up with it, but like the more I explore theology, the more I see references to the divine economy and see that metaphor of Jesus paying our debts as being, not merely a metaphor, but like an actually precise thing, that God is an accountant in a way. And that's like one of the ways that justice is done, that it's basically an economy, that everything is tracked in this.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And it comes that's where the functionalism that I've been working on comes into it. And I think the economy, the ecosystem, but economy too, I think that's something I need to start thinking more about.
And there's this hidden meaning there. Like when you get the economy choice at like a car rental place, it's the cheapest. They're trying to say like, they're trying to say like, this is the efficient choice for people who are trying to save money. And like, that economy both means a system of money and it means efficiency itself. If you're being, you are being efficient. And so the divine economy is not only the system for tracking all the things that happen in the universe, but also it is inherently efficient. It is the settlement layer. It is itself inherently efficient and perfect and wastes nothing. And that's kind of a very Tao Te Ching sort of idea, but I think that they're talking about the same thing there.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we've run out of time, and I would love to go more, and maybe that's something we could talk about next. I'm not familiar with Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, the foundational text of Taoism. I was deeply influenced by as a, I guess, late teen. And I have a priest who is kind of helping me stitch together Catholicism and Taoism in a way.
Oh wow, we got to talk about that.
I don't have it down yet, but we'll
okay. Eventually, yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again, Michael, or Mike, and how do I keep calling you Michael all of a sudden? But appreciate you, and our conversation has been really enjoyable. So and thank you. Anybody else who's tuned in, feel free to find all the discussions I have and with Mike Elias and Elias. Why can't I say the Elias? With Mike Elias and others who I find to be just so interesting, and Michael at the forefront. So thank you, and we'll tune out.